taste. And I've had somebody say, look, your oatmeal's not the same, or your chicken pot pie is not the same, or you change this recipe. We eat so much with atmosphere, music, ambiance, all those things. And it was an extremely hard thing to duplicate a building 200 years old into what we went into.
Well, joining us today at the table is Mark Forinash, the owner of Café Moxo. Mark, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, glad to be here, gentlemen. This is a pleasure. I've seen this a time or two, and I hope that I can follow up just as well as what the other folks did. But I may stumble a little bit.
Yeah,
I always try to stay on radio instead of podcast because I got the perfect face for radio. But
right.
Podcast, it's hello, we're there.
Well, we sure are glad to have you and thankful for your contributions to the community. We know. As we were talking just before we got started here, you guys just recently reopened.
We did.
After the I would say substantial fire in downtown Springfield last June. How are things going at your new location and after reopening?
Yeah, because the parking lot looks full.
Yes, so we've made some friends with the neighbors, and hopefully we're starting to fill in some of those gaps in the parking lot that existed before that a little bit. But we're kind of learning, and it's different. It's a lot of dine-in business. Downtown we had a lot of dine-in, but this flip-flops. I mean, we are predominantly dine-in, which we love because you could have a transaction with anybody, whether it's over the phone, whether it's over the internet, but unless you're in front of them and you see them enjoy your product, and it's not just food. If you guys come to my house, which you have, and cleaned up my basement, which you have, you get to see the joy on my face. Holy cow, I didn't even know that was possible. Yeah. Same thing with food. We just happen to have a couple different mediums and making customer service, I think, a go.
Yeah, I love the flow, the way it flows in there. You got the coffee bar in the back, right?
And then, we do on the west side.
Talk to us about that.
We're kind of in a little island there. We have some really good neighbors. So you have Sapori to the west, which fills in our Italian side, and then Sunny China. You have the office, the sports bar, which you can get a beverage. Today it happens to be coffee, but you can get a beverage there from what I've heard.
We may go in there a day or two a week.
Yes. And then you have Azteca across the street, and then just in our little area that we have Papa Murphy's, and we have Corkscrew.
Right.
So you can get that bottle of wine after you leave the office and kind of go home and cook and stuff like that. So it's really nice. There isn't anybody doing coffee in our little area. Not to throw out names necessarily, but I'd say our biggest competition or our biggest person that's in the coffee business is Bill Legge with Grab a Java, probably about a mile north on Chatham. And then you have a chain, Scooters, but they do some really neat things. And they're just over there on Wabash. So we're kind of in this little island without anybody with a like-minded or like-approach business.
Gotcha.
So
you have guys coming in and ladies coming in before work, grabbing coffee
we
on
do.
the way to work.
Yeah, we're trying to work on an app to make it a little bit more convenient. We have the online ordering at cafemoxo.com, but most of it's just coming in and grabbing it and going, and that way they don't have to get in the dine-in side. You can kind of have that separate entrance.
Has the menu stayed the same since you moved out west?
It really did. We made a few tweaks. There's a lot of sandwiches. It's funny. There's a lot of things that we took off the menu, even pre-fire, whatever you want to call it. In 23, we took them off the menu, and people come in, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you took this off. It was on downtown." No, you missed it by a year downtown. And the customer's always like, "It was my favorite sandwich," and I'm like, "I know, it was awesome, but you're the only person that ordered it." So we had to make that change. But no, I mean, for all joking aside, we try to do as many things as we can to everybody, but we also want to introduce new menu item stuff too, just to kind of change it up and not be stale.
I think it's interesting that the flip, it sounds like, that you've had in online ordering and folks that just order online, come in, pick it up, and go. That was substantially higher downtown.
Yeah,
numerically.
We basically flipped upside down. Where you're looking anywhere between 65 to 70% takeaway or online downtown. We're that now dine in on the west side.
Gotcha.
And I like to call it Central West End Springfield.
Sure,
and
I like that,
for the three people that are listening and watching.
Now we have more listeners than that.
Five or six.
Right. No, but I mean,
wife. And
Right. And I'll tell my wife about it too, so she'll get to see it. So, but yeah, it's been a nice change because you get to see them in your restaurant. It's not just a receipt and a drop off for 30 people. While we love that business and it really fuels our business, we get to see you come in and enjoy it, and hopefully enjoy it. So that's always the key.
How much more space do you have in the Central West side? Than you had downtown.
So we had about 3850 downtown. So a couple of storefronts. Not all of that usable. In some of those old buildings, there's a lot of nooks and crannies that you couldn't repurpose for use. And now we're a little bit north of 4,500.
Gotcha.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So a lot more square footage. Kitchen space went from 275 square feet downtown, which is not a whole lot bigger than maybe this studio that we're sitting in. And then we went to 1450.
Oh, man.
So we really we built 2 kitchens. We're really trying to go after the opportunities to do more business. So we hope we do.
Do you do a lot of catering?
We do. Okay. We do. We do a lot more day part catering, meaning business to business. But soon, probably starting at the end of May and June, we'll start in on doing some evening catering and some private parties there at Café Moxo. And it's a pretty good and well-lit space, so it's a pretty good place to have a party, baby shower, something like that.
That's cool. I didn't know. I knew you did some catering, but you're really going to expand that.
I think we're gonna try to grow that a little bit. We're gonna try to do as much as we can in-house. I have so much respect for the caterers in this town. It is a wild animal that is hard to get your hands around.
Sure.
So whenever you're leaving your facility, it makes it that much more difficult. So we really push for a lot more private parties.
Gotcha.
I think we have our first party in May, Memorial Day weekend. It's a graduation party. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What time do you guys close in the afternoon?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Yeah, so we're there every day.
Yeah. What time do you start?
6:30. So we get there a little bit before 4 normally. And then we roll out. The last person gets to go home and enjoy their family and friends by about 4:15.
Nice.
So it's not a bad gig.
7 days a week?
7 days a week.
Okay,
We could have probably, I'd say 6:30 might be a touch early on Saturdays and Sundays.
Sure.
But there's something easy to knowing 7 days a week, 6:30 to 3, minus Easter.
Yeah.
We are closing on Easter.
Good.
So we close on the majors, but it makes it a little bit more convenient than having all these multiple hours that you have to try to remember.
So how long's Café Moxo been around?
Yeah, a little bit over 18 years now.
Man.
So we formed back in the late part of 06, opened in early 07 downtown.
Okay.
And haven't really stopped.
Have you always been in this business?
Yeah. It's always a passion of mine. Ever since I was a little boy, we grew up in a town with no restaurants, no stoplights, anything. So the only time we got to go out to eat was my 2 brothers and my 2 parents. So there's 5 of us. We got to go out to eat 5 times a year. And that was it. So I was always enthralled with going somewhere and making a mess and letting somebody else clean it up.
Where did you grow
now I'm
up?
on the flip side of that. Clean up your table.
Yeah.
That's right. No, but grew up in southern Missouri, a little town called Pilot Knob.
Okay.
The Battle of Pilot Knob. I don't even know what year it was, but there was a battle there. And the battle was no restaurants. I think it took them all out. So that was the only times that we got to go out to eat. So it really was special. Awesome. And then I also wanted to create a business that when you go out to eat traditionally for birthdays, they're mostly in the evenings. Most of life happens between 4:30 and 9 o'clock at night. So I wanted to create a business where our folks didn't have to be working. They could be home with their family or friends or whatever they chose to do that night. So it was kind of a key component of how we crafted Café Moxo.
If I remember correctly, did you get into the restaurant business in the St. Louis area originally?
I did. I started with a company called Companion Baking Company out of St. Louis. So kind of I was going to St. Louis College of Pharmacy, as a matter of fact, and started selling bread to predominantly Bosnian population in South St. Louis City. And they would come in and buy $5 and $6 and $7 loaves of bread and wouldn't think twice about it because of quality and because you put that time and energy into it. So I fell back in love with the food industry at that point. I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to craft something that anybody else can do, but go about it a little bit differently so that nobody else wants to do what we do. And so that's kind of how I developed the menu. Anybody can do what we're doing. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to do something a little bit different and provide it in a place that makes it relatively inviting. So
Yeah. What made you choose to come to Springfield, Illinois to do Café Moxo?
So I fell in love with Springfield. So I met my wife in St. Louis, and her last name is McInerney, so really strong Springfield ties here. And she didn't have a ginormous interest in moving back, but wanted to follow the passion of what I saw in Springfield as opening a restaurant that I just didn't think was being met. We have so many great restaurants here. I just thought I could do it just a little bit differently. And so we lucked into moving here. I really like the speed of Springfield. We coined the new Café Moxo as Central West End, so you can see my St. Louis roots of where we were at.
But it's great. I think it's a perfect time.
Yeah, I mean, it's right in the middle.
It really is.
It's
a perfect description.
I drove out to MJ Kellner today, and I think it took me a little bit over 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I drove down here today, and I think it took me about 6 minutes.
agree.
And that is not speeding, Leland Grove police officers. I was following the speed limit. But no, in all seriousness, it really is in the center of town. And when we had to find a new location, it's where I really focused was how can we stay inside of Route 4 or Veterans, whatever you want to call it, and still get to all of our customers, I think, in a timely fashion. So same thing with you. You guys just have multiple locations, So what happens when you fight over Springfield and Decatur? Who gets who's in between there? I don't even know who's
Riverton.
Who gets Riverton?
Springfield does.
There you go. Right. There you go. Take that ownership.
We're too busy than Decatur does. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know, was it 2020 you guys, or 21, you won Small Business of the Year? What year was that?
We did. So
because I think
it was like 12. I think it was new and emerging business owner.
Yeah.
And then I think, were you with the chamber then? I think I shook your hand or gave you a hug or something, if I remember.
And we just coming out of COVID because of all the great work that you did. And I know you won't brag on yourself, but I know in the middle of COVID, your restaurant shut down, and yet you guys were preparing, giving away meals, hundreds of meals. A week, if I remember correctly.
We did.
And that was my
really
point, because you are very community oriented.
Yeah, and it's true. It's not just a bunch of malarkey. It's without the community coming in and supporting us, we'd have no business. I wouldn't be sitting here today. I wouldn't be schlepping the food here in about an hour. You know what I mean? I'd be doing something else and not doing what I really love to do. So to have both of those things, where the community supports you and to still be able to do what you love to do. I think that's what going into business is all about. And I think it's a lot of times, I think, you have a lot of history of being in business, a lot more history than me. And, it isn't just, I have this one great idea. There's so much more that comes down to it. It isn't just one good menu item or one service that you guys provide. You don't just clean carpets.
Right.
You put everything together. And I think that's what restaurants are too, is you have to have a huge passion for customer service.
Yeah, that is true.
A huge passion.
Yeah. And you know what? The other thing that I think a lot of people may not know is that how long were you shut down then from when the fire occurred last year?
Yeah, so June 19th, and then we reopened March 8th.
Okay, yeah.
So almost 10 months. Now, what is that? Almost 8 months.
Yeah.
9 months.
And so I went in to grab a cup of coffee that weekend when you guys opened up and recognized one of the guys behind the counter. And I said, hey, what have you been doing for a year? Where did you go work? And he said, well, no, Mark kept us employed. And tell everybody what you guys did and how you took care of your employees for a year and what they did.
Yeah, so
which I think is really cool.
Yeah, we were very fortunate, and it isn't any crap either. We need the community, but we also need those people, the men and women that are there taking your order if it's not me, or helping ring you out if it's not me, doing all those things that takes the business to go around. So we knew very early on that when I moved to Springfield, I think I knew about 12 people. That's it, back in early 07.
That was 9 more than I knew.
It's crazy. You need those folks to help get your business. And who better than the people that have been doing it for years before? Yeah. I can talk about my general manager, Brandon Hughes. I hired him 14 years ago as a part-time dishwasher. He was kind of a 19-year-old kid that had life figured out, and I put him in the dish tank part-time. And But you see something in these folks, and he's been running the show there ever since, and he's doing a fantastic job. Same thing with everybody else. Carl, I mean, I can go on, and I don't want to leave anybody's name out, or I will probably under the pressure of the cameras and stuff. But everybody that we decided that we were going to be able to keep and try to reopen with, and it was going to be hard. How do you still make their paychecks?
Right.
What do you do? Do you just sit at home and pay them? Do you have them do some things? And so we kind of crafted the idea of helping out in the community. Going to different shelters, going to Central Illinois Food Bank and packaging up food for the folks that need it during the holidays, nursing homes, St. John's Bread Line, Washington Street Mission.
Wow.
We did a lot of cooking for Compass for Kids, which is a phenomenal program here in Springfield. And it really helps the kids, I think. So many of us maybe sometimes take for granted that we know that lunch is in about an hour, and you may already have it mapped out where you're going. Some of these kids have no option what they're even going to eat tonight. So that's a program that we still want to do a lot more things with, I think, after we get our feet underneath us a little bit there. But just how can we use and utilize the people that we were paying already to go out and help the community get stronger? And so I think we're just one of those businesses in town. Awesome. That really tries to do stuff.
That's pretty powerful stuff to take.
Yeah, I mean, we could have
earning a
sat
paycheck
at home, I guess,
and have them go out and serve the community and pay them to do it. That's
good stuff.
Good stuff for sure.
It was pretty fun. And, we were relatively smart. You hate paying those insurance premiums every single month. You see that dollar amount, and you're like, when am I ever going to need this? Well, folks, you're going to need it at some point.
That's right.
Yeah. And you guys see it every single day.
Absolutely.
It's no surprise to you with your disaster work, with flooding, with all the different myriad of things that can happen where your business comes in, provides a service, and gets them back on their feet. You see it every single day. So, my statement, I think, to all businesses and individuals is just, A, look at your insurance plan. B, take it up a lot, because we maxed ours out. We did not have enough, and we're trying to figure out what to do going forward. But, most importantly, we're at least on our feet to at least give it an opportunity. So take a look at your insurance plans, and then reach out to folks, that are going to help you utilize that and get your house back on order, or your business, or whatever it is. So, it's just relative luck, relative planning, and just a lot of hard work and dedication. And I remember a couple days after we closed, my wife and I were having a conversation, and she's like, "You sure you want to do this again?" I said, "Look, it's what I do.
It's who I am and what I do.
It is.
Right?
It's what I love, and I think it gives me that energy every single day to get up early and stay late, is just seeing the satisfaction on the customer's face. And then more importantly, being able to employ as many people as we do. I actually just had a conversation with Tom Morantz before coming here. He stopped in and he said, "Boy, I remember when I was young, it was going to be so great when I hired a bunch of people." And he was just looking at me, and I was like, I think I said the same thing about this Central West End. We hired a bunch of people, and for all intents and purposes, we're very glad that we do. We get to, I guess, assist in these folks making their car payments and living their lives, and so that's a really neat thing. But it is a balancing act sometimes. And a lot of people that go into business are like, "I just want to make all the decisions," and it's so great to stand on this high table and say, "You know what, this is how we're going to do it." Folks, it doesn't work that way. You really, for me, I work for everybody there. My job is to put everything I can in front of them for them to be successful, not the other way around, so that I'm successful. And that's kind of how we look at it every day. If we failed you and we didn't have the chicken ordered, it's a funny thing. I went to MJ Kellner today to get chicken because we went through too much this weekend. But if we wouldn't have gone and gotten that this morning at 8 a.m., look, there's no pot pies at noon.
Which, by the way, are the best pot pies ever.
They are good.
So same thing you do. You put everything in front of your crew and in front of the people that you entrust, and they carry on your logo. They carry on your business.
That's right.
It takes a lot to give away all that decision-making, because it's really up to them on the line. They control your business. They control your reputation. And so you really have to trust them. But I think it goes two ways. I think they trust you too, and I think they trust you too. So I think it makes it easy.
Yeah, good point.
So with your new space, I'm not a cook. I mean, I'll do burgers and steaks on the grill.
That's a cook.
Yeah,
That's a cook.
But that's
Right.
it. That's about it. He's a cook. It's a hobby. He's a good one. So
It's a good hobby. It's a hard business. It's a really good hobby.
Great hobby,
Great
but
hobby,
difficult business.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, leaving a kitchen, I think you said it was 275 square feet. Now you got 1,450 square feet. What's that like logistically? Was there like a pretty steep learning curve for your folks who went from one space to a new one?
Yeah, a big learning curve.
Think about that and imagine it would be.
One of the ways to look at that learning curve is look at all of our Google reviews since we reopened. That's one way to look at the learning curve. You know, we've been very blessed and fortunate for so many years to have a huge amount of positive reviews, and then you start to see some of these reviews come in on Facebook and on Google reviews and Yelp, and you're like, whoa, what happened? Boy, we are the same plate. It is the same food. It is the same recipes, but it is not the same process. It gets wildly different. The bigger that we grew, I think, there at our new location, 2 separate kitchens, and you can understand communications within your own organization and how hard it is to play that telephone game. And by the time it gets to the last person, you ordered a turkey sandwich and that person's making a salad by the time it gets all the way down the line. So we've had to learn a lot on that. And we have walkie-talkies to try to assist with that because it's a bigger facility and just so many new people. We had 11 or 12 existing employees and now we're up to 37.
Wow.
And so you can just 300% growth in employees and trying to get everybody trained while you're standing in front of me ordering a sandwich, which thank you for doing. And thank you, Springfield. But, you can imagine, and I'm not looking for any pity. Our Google reviews, we earned them. We performed like dog dirt, but just know that we do pay attention to those, and those are wildly important. And sometimes we pay attention to the negatives more than we do the positives. At least I do sometimes, because how do we get better? But the sense of humor, is a little, is a little shorter nowadays. It seems that maybe before.
It does.
I'm just trying to balance that and learn that, and just know that we do pay attention and we do care, and we are trying to get better.
And will knowing you,
absolutely.
We will.
Absolutely,
it's
will.
not all terrible. It really isn't. It's
well, and you would think people would show you a little grace, right? You just open a new location, and people don't anymore.
And
they
it's
don't.
okay. I'm pretty thick-skinned, but you know what? Just know that it's important to me that your hard-earned money, you come in and spend hard-earned money because you busted your butt for it. It's your job. You need to get something in return. And we maybe weren't living up to all those expectations. And so we've gotten so much better. I can be honest with you. For the past 10 days, I've actually started having fun again.
Good.
So we're at that point where now we're just kind of nitpicking little things to get better at instead of systematic whole interchanges. We remodeled the kitchen and rearranged it 3 times since we opened. So we freaking listened. And so we're getting there in a month, 3 different times. Just changing the flow and stuff like that. And, it's funny. We had an item on our menu downtown that was one of our best sellers at breakfast, and I couldn't give it away at our new location. They just killed us on it and thought it was terrible, and the recipe never changed. Nothing changed. And so we've learned, downtown, it's funny, we had an unsweetened peach iced tea, and it was our house iced tea, and people loved the holy crap out of it. And out here, I couldn't have poured more of it down the drain than what I had in a month.
Unbelievable.
And so we finally just said, forget it. We dumped it, literally. And, now we're just going with an unsweet tea that's house-made and crafted, and people seem to be on board. So it is a difference in 3.1 miles in people's what they want to eat or how in which they choose to do it. So we do listen. I don't always agree on your opinions.
Well, what's interesting? Mike Coffey is a good buddy of mine, and he assures me that the recipes downtown at Saputo's are pretty much the same as they are.
But they don't. The customers don't think they are. You
they
eat so much with atmosphere. You guys, we could do this podcast at Moxo, and your people that are listening and watching and reviewing this and laughing and trying to figure out why I'm stumbling, they're going to be like, you know what? It's not the same podcast. Yes, and I've had somebody say, "Look, your oatmeal's not the same, or your chicken pot pie is not the same, or you change this recipe." We eat so much with atmosphere, music, ambiance, all those things, and it was an extremely hard thing to duplicate. A building 200 years old, into what we went into, and how do we do that without looking Cheney, or we sold out, or we went to a strip mall, or whatever the case may be, whatever the interpretations are. It was really difficult, and we knew we weren't going to be able to do it, so let's just do what we wanted. And God bless my wife, she designed the whole dang place.
Is that right?
She did fantastic. And it's all her idea on where these tables, so you can blame her. But no, I mean, really, she did great, and we have so many compliments on the space. We just needed to get our speed up a little bit. We are a quick service restaurant, so when you wait 40 minutes at a quick service restaurant during opening weekend, it hurts a little bit. So we've gotten much better since then, and I think we're back to the same old Moxo, if that's such a thing. But it is the same thing. You can make that same dish at home, and then you can go to Mike Coffey's place out west, and they're like, "You changed the lasagna."
Exactly.
No, you didn't. You know what I mean?
Recipe.
It is an interesting concept.
It really is.
Never thought about it.
Noise,
but you're right. Everything
ambiance,
around
everything.
us influences how we feel, think, and apparently taste.
I know,
our
drives
food.
him
And
crazy.
downtown was dark.
Yeah.
We only had 6 windows and 3,800 square feet. So, and what I mean by that, the brick walls and all. So we tried to do as much as we could, but at our new location, there's so much natural light.
You
and
have
things.
all those windows.
So now we actually have to clean. And no, I'm just kidding. But
it definitely
we
doesn't
did just
have
our
the
health review.
It doesn't
so,
have the patina that the downtown location
Right, and
had
it
for
doesn't,
sure,
and we
because
won't-
it is nice. I mean, it's brand new.
Yeah.
Almost has a sterile feeling in a good way,
It
in my
can,
opinion.
it can.
I don't mean it negatively,
No,
but I was impressed.
absolutely.
It looks great.
Well, it's interesting
Absolutely.
because I never thought about what you said a minute ago, that when you try to take the old Moxo and move it there, when you think about the difference in the facilities to make it, I think you used the word Cheney, not feel Cheney like you were a chain.
Right.
That never crossed my mind, but I can see
it's
that
something I
as you
was
talk
concerned about.
it.
It was something I was concerned about. And to be honest with you, it's one of the reasons why we stayed downtown as long as we did. And it's why I love downtown, and I still continue to love downtown, is you get a little bit more identity. You get a little bit more feel when you're in some of those buildings.
Yeah.
And then, you move to a location that may be westward, and I think expectations change a little bit. I think all kinds of things change a little bit. And I think we're living up to them now, but it was reopening was tough. I forget how hard it was 18 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was a lot younger, I'm 50 now. So, my give a crap meter was a little bit shorter than I think what it was back then. So we're getting it back, and I actually feel a little younger and a little better.
Do you have any kids in the business or anything, or any other family members?
I do not. My son, he'll be 11 on Monday, as a matter of fact, and so I'm taking my first days off next week. He's on spring break with Christ the King.
Good for you.
So I'm going to take some time off, and we're going to go and relax a little bit and kind of get back to family. I haven't had much family time in the last month and a half.
I'm
2 months.
sure. I wonder why.
But no complaints. And
Yeah.
I have the best wife in the world.
That's awesome.
She allows me that space, but her sense of humor meter is running a little short too. So.
Where'd the Moxo name come from?
It's kind of I had filled out all the paperwork for the Secretary of State. I think if you're starting a business, you don't want to give away too many things to people. You don't want to give away your name. You don't want to give away your website, all those kinds of things. Kind of keep those things bottled up, almost like people do with kids' names nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
But, if you give your name out too soon, there may be somebody that buys your website or that gets your your handles and things like that on social media. So we were going to be called Cafe Lincoln, and I still own that website to this day.
Is that right?
And it's all I knew about Springfield. Being a dumb St. Louis boy, I was like, Abraham Lincoln. That's all you really know. But there's so much more to Springfield, but it is a pretty big thing here, and I got to give a lot of kudos to that. But it's we were going to be called Cafe Lincoln, and I think we got up that next day, and Moxo just popped into our head, in my head, and it was a mix of our two dogs' names, which were Moxon and Rambo.
Okay,
so we came up with Moxo, and
no kidding,
that's pretty cool.
We play off the X's and O, so there's a lot of things that really went into it, but I was going to file with the Secretary of State, and I had the website and all those things back then. We didn't really have social media handles too much back then.
Yeah.
But I had all that stuff bought and paid for, and Moxo There isn't anything else like it.
No.
You know, and so it's kind of easy and fun to play with that black and red. And then we teamed up with Ace Signs way back then in 2006, and they helped us kind of develop some logos and some branding, and we worked on a lot of things back and forth, and we just went with it. If I could go backwards, the only reason I think we put cafe in the name is because of Xochimilco. And everybody, when we first opened, thought we served Mexican food because of Xochimilco and the X. And we'll still get that every once in a while. A whole lot less now than back then.
Yeah.
So I put cafe in front of it. But, you know, nowadays I probably could have rebranded it as Moxo, but... You know, I don't know. It's a gamble.
Where the
Yeah.
You know, you talk about your early days and starting and being in downtown. I know, and you said it a minute ago, I know you love downtown Springfield and your investment in downtown Springfield. I would say helped change an entire block down there. And I know I think it was probably more during COVID than any other time it became, instead of Adams Street, the Adams family down there, because all you guys were kind of slugging it out together, trying to keep your doors open and serve the community. And But it would be a failure on my part as the old guy from the chamber to not say thanks for all your investment in downtown Springfield, because I know what you put in. Well, I don't know everything you put in down there, but I know your investment was enormous, and
and I think
your emotional investment too, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think you can, you know, having a bunch of money is really easy. You can do a lot of things. You can make a lot of mistakes.
Right.
But when you really don't have very much money and you just have time and commitment and love and passion and a little bit of money to kind of get things going, that's when you really see the buy-in. That's when you really see the hard work. And, you know, I look at sometimes you see some organizations that do some crowdfunding and that's how they're going to open their doors or they're going to get all these people together and kind of source fund these things. And unless you really, really, really have a lot invested in it emotionally, you may not work as hard. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you, I work hard. Yeah. For the little bit of sales that we get, we work really hard because I think we love it. You know, and it isn't just all about money. It really is about if you can go home and know that you did a couple of things right that day. Yeah. You didn't have to lose an employee. Yeah. And then you made somebody's. You know, we had a lady that turned 104 on Friday. Wow. 104. Holy guacamole. And, you know, so we got to see, she came in and it was really cool. And you kind of take a step back and you look at that and you're like, I'm not sure she would have come in downtown. The parking, you know, sometimes down there, but she came in out west. You know, it's one of the things that we hear downtown is, God, we loved your spot, but you were downtown. And, you know, I'm here to say there are so many great organizations downtown, so many great businesses that need just as much opportunities as anybody else in town. Can parking be a hassle? Sure, it can be. Can parking be hassle at our place sometimes where we're at right now? Yeah, it can. Probably, you may be parking in front of the office or in front of Sunny China. You may be walking further sometimes now than what you did downtown, but it's that perceived, you know, implications that you just because you can't park on 4th and Adams that it's visitable. I don't even think that's a word. Is that a word?
It
visitable?
Is.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Visitable.
My wife is thrilled, I'm sure. So, but no, I mean, it's, you know, there's so many great businesses down there, and the Adams family was coined, I think, for those reasons. It was like-minded individuals that gave a crap about what they were doing as opposed to who they were. Yeah. Right. And so that's what I think you see a lot of in business is give a crap about who you are. You're not gonna go as far, but if you give a crap about what you are, I think you're really gonna move the needle a little bit. And so, how do you make those differences versus just selling food? Is, you know, care about the people that come in and see what happens, and, you know, God willing, they've kept us in business for a while, and we hope to have another 18 years. And I don't. Maybe my son will want it. My son's name is Baker. Yeah. Nice. By the way, Baker that? Rue. So you know Rue, obviously from all your cooking things. So like you know he's kind of destined for that. But between you and I and all those people. I have no interest in him coming into the restaurant industry. I hope he's such a good, kind-hearted kid. We kind of want him to go into education.
Yeah.
And I think you can touch so many more people's lives and move the needle further in helping our youth become who they should be.
Yeah.
So I hope he goes in education and not the restaurant business.
Gotcha.
I like it.
Yeah, well, you got to ask him the question. I know he's got things to do today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks.
Got some Popeyes
Thanks
to
for all of
Yeah.
your all of your investment
Yes.
in the community, and certainly your business investment in people's lives that you employ. So we always ask folks as we wrap this up.
Yes, I am for sale.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we can talk.
I'm just kidding.
If you could look back and tell your younger self, were you 32 when you opened the business?
Yeah.
Tell your 32-year-old self, or give your 32-year-old self some advice based on these last 18 years, what would that advice be?
I think it would be sit back, relax, and enjoy it a little bit more. Don't put so much pressure on yourself every single day. I still do that. I still keep my foot to the pedal. And, my wife is such a great grounder. And she keeps me level-headed and just don't let everything bother you. And you can't be everything to everybody.
Right.
One of the things is, maybe just feel okay with disappointing people at the level at which they can understand. Whether that's an employee, whether that's a customer, whether that's a business. I had a delivery that was supposed to be here at 10:30 and we screwed it up and we didn't get here until 11. I think relax a little bit. We do just happen to serve food. We're not like the men and women saving lives at all the hospitals and things like that. But at the same time, it's important.
Right.
Yeah.
It may be the only lunch that you get that day. It may be the only dinner that you get that day. So it matters, and it really does. But I think it's probably enjoy life a little bit more. I'm pretty sure here, and hopefully a lot of years when I'm laying at that final day, that I'm not going to look back and say, holy cow, I'm glad I worked my rear end off.
Right.
I'll probably be like, look at the family that you have around you, and look at the impacts that you were, I think. And sometimes that's worth more. And I think I probably wish I would have known that more at 32 and probably been a little bit more relaxed. And, nowadays I listen so much more to people around me and the people that I surround myself with, i.e. employees. To be honest with you, at 32, I probably still thought every decision I was making was the right decision. And it wasn't. Surround yourself with far smarter, far nicer, far more capable people than you, and you'll go far.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Well said. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, you've learned a lot in 18 years. That's for sure.
Holy cow. Yeah. My wife begs to differ. We're actually hitting 20 years in marriage, so she's kept me around at the end of this month. So God bless her for that. But it really is. I think it's the family and friends that you create and the impact that you make on your employees' lives. It's pretty special.
Yeah,
awesome.
Good stuff. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for coming, Mark.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.
Yep.